All right, we are live now. Welcome to episode number 12 of Idu Startup Harate. Today we have with us Mandar Mutalikdesai. Hello. Okay, so quick intro to the episode itself. We will talk about the POCs. The most important part about building an idea is really to begin with the POC and then prove it to your first circle, friends, family, everyone who has to support you, and let them know that you have an idea that is worth its attention, and more than anyone prove it to yourself that it actually works, right? So we will split the episode into two parts. One is, of course, talk about POCs and do's and don'ts of that, and right after that we have lots of people in the room as well from BC. So we will also, I'm admitting all of them into the Zoom room, yeah. And then let's see. Oops. Let me unmute Mandar. Okay, there you go. Sorry.
No problem.
So, and then they can raise hands and then we'll allow them in. Everyone will be unmuted, and then be responsible when you're when you're not on mute. So there's a baby crying. If you're flushing your toilet, make sure you mute yourself. Right. So with that said, Mandar, thoughts on POC?
Yes. So, well, let's quickly define what constitutes POC. POC andre ಏನು. So, yeah, everybody knows it's a proof of concept, but where do you draw the line? How big does a POC have to be? So, to my mind, a POC is something that shows that the idea works without regard to things like scale, without regard to maybe even all the data, right? So for instance, if you are building, say, a product, a computer vision product, right, or an augmented reality product, right, for maybe the healthcare industry, right? So something that allows for remote consultation with physicians, right? What you really need to, so the augmented reality space itself is not new, right? What you really need to show is something that works, right? Where I can wear a headset, or with a mobile app, I'm able to interact with a doctor as a patient, and I'm able to interact with a patient as a doctor, right?
Right.
There may be 100 other challenges here. Maybe the rendering isn't great at all, but it basically lays an idea for what that product might look like, right? Can I now then take this to an investor and say, hey, this is a very rough cut of what I'm trying to build. Do you think you'd be interested in this? It's
Right.
just the skeleton of what you're trying to build, doesn't address any of the scale challenges, doesn't even have all the features. It's a very basic implementation. That's what a POC is to my mind. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Uh, it is, but taking one step before, it's knowing what your MVP is, the minimum viable product, right?
Correct.
If you have an idea, you want to say, again, test the idea or pitch it to someone or introduce something. Like there was a point when there was a bubble when you could just take the idea on a slide deck and then you would get money. Since that doesn't happen anymore, you are required to build a POC, right? So my first check itself was $2,000. Like they're not big at all, but it was on the slide deck. But I got a $2,000 just because I told them the idea. ನಂಗೆ ಅವಾಗೇನ್ ಅನ್ಸಿತ್ತು, okay, now $2,000 is a good exit. I'll just not build. Right, and then I'll quit on this. This is 2012, when I actually, for my first time getting an investor to write a check, which was fantastic. But to you, Mandar, my curiosity is like having built products over the years, right? It doesn't have to be startups, even in any of the largest corporations, right? where you pitch an idea saying that, hey, here is this. You go to your VP and then you tell them that I have this idea, we should push this in and that. So does the POC happen for your idea, or even in that, do you filter out for what your POC should be?
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot of filtration that happens, right? So again, I think we have talked about this before, probably in our very first episode, and I can't really place the source of this, but there are 4 main questions that you need to answer, right? If you have to show value, basically, right? Proof of value and ತೋರಿಸೋದಾದ್ರೆ 4 ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ. What is the problem? The second question is, what is the solution to that problem? The third question is, who is the customer? The fourth question is, why should that customer pay you for that solution?
Right.
If you are able to answer these 4 questions, then you have established a value, and then you can start building out your proof of concept, right?
But let me ask you this. What if you're building a Facebook or a Uber where no one pays anything?
Well, see, it's not true that nobody is paying anything. In fact,
at least for Facebook.
No, even for Facebook. So with Facebook, with a platform like Facebook, the beauty is this, and this is not a new idea. I'm recycling someone else's idea. I can't place the source. See, on Facebook, we are the users, right? We are not paying anything, which means that we are the product.
Right, we are.
Right? The customer for Facebook is the other people who want to place advertisements.
Right.
Facebook is basically an ad platform, and we are being sold. So if you are using an online service where you're not being charged for it, well, you are the one who's being sold. Actually, you're the product.
Which is true. Andhra ignored for like they started in 2004, and up until 2012, they did not have ads on the platform, or somewhere around that time, right? 2010, they did not have ads. And for 8 years, they were just building the product, and then people were willing to bet money on it, surely because of scale.
Yes, and I think that journey was a bit smaller for Google. I think they started seriously venturing into ads post 2005, if I'm not wrong, right? Although they had started building the ads platform even a little bit before that. But then with Google, it's a very different game, right? They are much bigger corporation, bigger dreams also,
right?
Big ballsy projects, right? With someone like Page at the head, he was a different. He's a different beast altogether, right? And we'll talk about him also maybe. But with Facebook, you're right. So they bided their time, right? They waited long enough, right? So the proof of concept that they kept building was that you can bring enough people onto this platform who will give out enough information that can be anonymized and sold, hopefully anonymized and sold, right? And that's the POC that they built, right? Now, so this is where I think your POC and your MVP, those kind of become a little blurry, right? So generally, if it's a more or less linear journey, right? You know what's the final product you want to build. It's a Mercedes. So your MVP is a bicycle, and then you start building out a very, very basic wireframe of a bicycle with a rickety handle, rickety wheels, and everything, which you then try to sell, right? But that's a linear journey, more or less, right? But with something like Facebook, right? I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg thought on day one that I'm going to build this out into an ad platform, right? I don't know if Larry Page and Sergey Brin thought that, okay, let's make money by selling ads on this platform, right? But then again, when you look at Google, one of the projects. So some of the Google projects are really big, right? There's Android,
right?
Example, right? And then there's autonomous driving, right? And as it turns out, these are all projects that are headed by Larry Page himself, right? So he himself led these projects, right?
Unlike Android, which was acquired, but yeah, that's okay. But
he spearheaded it himself, right? They didn't start it. That's correct.
Right.
Now, if you think about it, right, they built maps, right? Now when you think about maps as a product, as an MVP and as a POC, again, what concept was he trying to prove, right? Maps was never intended to be used by humans, right? Maps was probably intended to be used by the autonomous cars. That is why he had the vision to build out maps.
That's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah,
No.
no, but look, yeah, sure. So, I mean, the only
Well,
person.
I'm kidding, but it can totally be sold as a conspiracy theory.
Absolutely, and the only
Right.
person who can really testify to it is Larry Page himself, right?
Mm, mm.
And I don't think he's going to do that. So, but it's totally imaginable that you cannot have autonomous cars unless you have maps,
Right, right, right.
right? So I don't know. So maybe a POC need not always come with the vision for a larger product.
Need
A
not.
POC can start off as something that's a possibility.
Right. So let me add some context, Ignan. POC, the one of the reasons why I think POC is the biggest beast of them all is because I come from devices world, right? So Nanak, it is very simple. You take a breadboard, I'll give you POC, and then from whatever it is, right? So I can, you want a for app POC, we'll give you an app on the phone. Ecosystem exists. Amele, if you want, say like right now, I'm in a hearing aid industry. If you want us to plug a hearing aid in, we will do that too. That is easy because you can put together hardware and then you can put together software, and then it is easy to show it. It could vary from 2 weeks to 6 weeks to what your POC is. But the beast of a POC comes if the product is related to data science. And of course, only you can answer this, right? So what happens on a sample project like this where I am at loss? Data science or because there's no data, there's no training set, there is no input or anything, right?
Yeah. So see, in the devices world, like you said, right, there is an ecosystem that's well understood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know what can and cannot be assembled. You know what can and cannot sit on this hardware. So
Mm-hmm.
you're more or less clear on what kind of capabilities can go there, and
Right.
based on that, you have an idea about your objective, right? Now in the data science world,
Mm-hmm.
you're right. So the ecosystem is not a given, right? There is no such thing as an ecosystem, right?
Right.
Especially in the services world, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are an AI services startup, and there are many of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, they struggle because there is no ecosystem, right? Because imagine this: you go to a client, right?
Mm-hmm.
The client will tell you a pain point.
Mm-hmm.
They will tell you that they want a dashboard where they can visualize their sales quarter on quarter,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to see a prediction, right, 2 weeks out
Right.
or 1 quarter out. They will tell you a pain point like this. They'll be very clear on it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The question is then, where does the data for it come from, right?
Right.
And a lot of the time the client will have that data, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they won't even have that data, but let's assume the better case: the
Mm.
client has that data but it's not usable, not yet anyway,
Right.
right? So this is the kind of problem that an AI kind of solution will always suffer from, right? You
Right.
will go in, it's easier for you to identify the pain point, the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for you to also solution the problem,
Mm-hmm.
but the issue will always be with data, right? Where is this data going to come from? Who owns this data? And let's not even go into the security and privacy aspects of this data. That's a completely different beast. Let's just say, okay, if I'm going to visualize your sales and give you a forecast on your sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
Point me to this data. Where is your sales data, right?
Right.
Just getting to that is a hard enough problem,
Right. Right.
right? And
Asa,
then
given your service, would a corporation with data, would they be willing to share a sample data or pattern? How does that work?
so that usually is a journey that you actually get to undertake it with the client. You get to see them struggle with this question, right?
Mm.
So they will come to you and they'll say, yeah, I have this problem, and then you say, I want this data, and you both go, okay, I did not realize that,
Right.
right? Now everyone knows that data is central to AI and data science, but nobody really kind of imagines that they're just going to have to part with this data. They are going to actually have to work on making this data available to the data scientist. Otherwise there is no magic that is going to happen. There is going to be no forecast, no AI,
Right.
no input, no automation, right? So very few organizations already have that maturity, that data or maturity, right? So, and this is what I mean by the ecosystem, right? You can say that the ecosystem is ready when your client has the data maturity, right? And you have the AI maturity as a service provider, right? But when you have the AI maturity, or at least you believe you have the AI maturity, but your client doesn't have the data maturity, then the first thing that data science startups look to do is get you to a point on that data maturity where, first of all, this data is available, right? Building data lakes, ensuring anonymization, data privacy, data security issues. And then depending on the sector in which your client is, they will have issues with you taking this data on the cloud, transmitting it over the internet. And you have to go through all those problems, right? And then you get to the point where you get to do the fancy data modeling and building the models, the data science, the forecasting, the NLP, the natural language understanding, and everything. But that comes towards the end. You really got to have patience. So, which is why a lot of data science startups pivot from from a services viewpoint to a product viewpoint, right? They actually build products. Some of them are products for building out data lakes, right? Reference architectures for data lakes, and they build out products for they build out AI products also. They say, okay, here's a product that will help you establish an automatic contact center, customer care center. They will not tell you, oh, I have AI solutions, I have NLP solutions, let me build a chatbot for you. No, right? That is two-way.
They aim on the product.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Looks like some people on the Zoom call are not on mute. So mute yourself because I hear an echo. So when you have a question, you can put it in the chat box, and then I'll unmute you, and then you can start your video, right? Related to that, there are a couple of comments on YouTube. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, write your comments, any questions, provided you're a subscriber. So, Gagan N is saying, as you are talking about data science nowadays here in India, bad trend started among young engineers. They are thinking Python is data science. What's your take on it?
Oh, well,
that's a weird.
Python is as much data science as MS Word is a novel. No, but on a serious note, well, Python is definitely the go-to programming language, scripting language when it comes to most data science solutions. But it certainly is not the only language that you can develop data science solutions with. There's Golang. You can even build out some pretty good stuff in Java. There's R, right? And you can never really write off Perl. So yes, but Python is not data science. Python can be used to achieve goals in data science.
But if someone is calling it a trend in India, it scares me. But I really hope it is not a trend where people think Python is data science.
So is the commenter saying that it's a trend in India that people are beginning to equate Python with data science?
Yeah.
You know what? I have to agree with this person. Gagan, did you say Gagan is the commenter? Yeah. So I have to agree with Gagan because as scary as it is, it's actually true. You see a lot of people who imagine that if they upskill in Python, they can quickly become data scientists, right?
Oh, damn it.
I don't know how or why that trend has set in, but it certainly is there, right? But as it happens, they always get a root shock, right? And it's a root shock. It shouldn't happen that way. They need to be given better, access to education. They need to be given better, viewpoints so that they can learn that learning Python is just one of the things that I'm going to have to do if I want to do data science. But this person is right. Only when they get to a point where they ask for a job in data science do they realize, okay, I'm not fully equipped yet.
Right. And maybe that is the reason the whole false trend is also because all the job descriptions say you must know Python or something like that, or at least know Python, right?
Yeah, but then it's like that is one of the things that's on that's one of the things in the job description, right? But there's so much else that's there on the
he
job description.
he's also saying they are ignoring mathematics behind it, and but that's the common thing amongst everyone. They ignore the mathematics that is required for everything.
Exactly. I mean, and it's not just the mathematics, right? We also
Right.
ignore the domain knowledge that is required with it. For
Right.
example, doing data science in the financial markets industry is very different from, say, doing data science for telecommunications,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
Very different markets, very different ways of functioning, very different kinds of data being generated, different rates at which it gets generated,
mm-hmm.
very different nature, right? So it's not enough to just know the methods. You also have to know the methods, which includes the maths, by the way. It's not enough to know just the methods.
Right.
It's important to also understand the nature of the beast itself,
Right.
right? For example, you say, okay, I can do forecasting. Can you really build a forecasting model for, say, the stock market?
Uh, you could try.
Right? Now, in theory, the answer to that question is yes, but you
I
can't.
really hope common sense dictates you
Yeah,
more than
exactly,
theory. Right.
exactly.
So on, although it's a little digressing from the POC topic, Sunita is saying how reliable are sales forecasts? You've tried using built-in models with seasonality, etc., but the accuracy tends to be low simply because usage is ad hoc.
Well, how reliable are they? Built well, they are highly reliable. And well, so where I work, we have built forecasting models for sales
Mm-hmm.
in the retail space, right? And well, but we have incorporated a whole lot more than just seasonality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the trick is in identifying the right features, right? So you've got to really explore your data, plus some out of the box. I hate to use that phrase, but you do really need out of the box thinking, right? So when we say seasonality, so here's a hint: what else goes with seasonality? What else is there, right? We've got to think about that. So it comes down to assembling the right data and picking out the right features from that data.
Right? So, dragging it back to POCs from building the products, etc. And the irony there is, like everyone, where they were going towards service industry, and now with data science, they want to build products first. That's the irony of it all. So hopefully that way products will come out of India, than India being a service industry. Yeah, right. So, but getting back to POCs, in general, not specific to data science, how do you pick technology that is required? For example, language is one. So, how do you pick what language should you program in? What are your thoughts on?
Well, honestly, I don't think I'm really fully qualified to answer that question, and I actually love to hear your views also on this. But here's my take: you do not start out thinking about a programming language, right? I think you start thinking about, first of all, you just start with the business function in mind, right? So I want to build a POC that achieves a certain objective, right? And as long as that objective is achieved for your POC, I think you should just go ahead and build it, right? The
Mm-hmm.
real question about choice of technology and everything comes post the POC phase, right? When you actually start building the MVP itself,
Right.
right? So but let's assume this question is for that point, right? Post the POC.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you start doing is, from a technology point of view, you start thinking about it in architectural terms, right? What are the different systems I need to build? What are the different components I need to build? What will be the concern of
Mm-hmm.
each component, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, okay, you're going to need to store some data. So, all right, so I'm going to set up some databases. Even if you just set up MySQL databases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you then going to think about a data access layer, right? Because you don't want to have a layer or a component that is slightly abstracted and which has a particular function to also have the responsibility of accessing data, making database connections,
Mm-hmm.
right? Writing and reading data. You want to get someone else to do that, which means you're writing a data access layer. So everything above the data access layer doesn't care that there is MySQL, below it. They
Right.
just that information is abstracted away from them, right? So like this, how do you think about this architecturally? How do you think about separation of concerns? How do you isolate complexity? How do you make your architecture as extensible as possible? Meaning that with minimal changes, I should be able to add more functionality. right? I should be able to add more code, right? If there is a bug, I should be able to go and isolate that complexity and say, oh, the bug is in this component, right? Which means that I don't have to bring down everything else.
Right.
Right? The rest of that code stays. So I think it's you and architecture is largely common sense, right? You need a little bit of training in software engineering, but it's largely common sense. You think about it in those terms, and then the technology stack starts becoming clear to you.
Right.
Right. And then you can say, okay, I also need to distribute this. So I might develop a Python Spark stack, or, if you have streaming data, you might say, I'll do Spark streaming, or you'll say, okay, no, I don't need that. Let me just put my different components in containers. Let me put it on Kubernetes. I'll put it on the cloud. Right. So there's so many different ways in which you can think about scale and technology. But I think the basic thing is to think about it in architectural terms. Right. What do you think about this problem?
So it's tricky when it comes to POC. Like, unless if you are really dedicated to a product that you're building for, say, a Python ecosystem, right? Athwa, in wherever, like, let's say if you're building drivers, media codec drivers, then if you are working with those, then you want to stick to that ecosystem. If not for an ecosystem that you're building a product for, you strictly build it for the idea to prove yourself. There are a couple of things why you need a POC. The POC is required to A, bring money in by an investor, B, or A and B at the same order of priority, is also to bring more people into your company, right? You want to convince someone that the idea works. And then people are like, hey, I haven't seen this. This sounds like a stupid idea. I don't want to be part of this. Or like idru, and say you have $1 million, you don't want to invest your own money. You want to validate it by asking someone legit to invest in it. And for them to see the POC, you need to show that, hey, here is my POC, here is the product, here is the idea, here is how it works. Like, you wouldn't really want, like, Kakan Kade $1 million, you don't want him to invest, right? You want the investor to be legit, who understands the product, who understands the roadmap, etc. So that's the reason why you build a POC. For example, even in a large scale company, if you want to go build your POC, it's because you want to get the sign off from your VP or whoever heads your product to give a roadmap, to give all the funding that is required for this, right? So technology is never a concern. Like, the reason why I ask this is because a lot of entrepreneurs meet up, people are like, I want to build this product, but I don't know Python. I'm like, don't be an asshole. Stick to what you're asking for. You're building a POC for the idea, right? So stick to building it for the idea.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And see, the thing is, if you don't know Python, it's fine. I mean, assuming you're a technology guy, you know something else, Java, whatever. You go ahead and build what you know, right? Mm-hmm. Because what you're building right now is just a very simple representative of the final thing, the final product, right? Nobody expects it to be perfect. Nobody expects you to go and sell what you're building, right? It's just supposed to show and tell. Mm-hmm. So just build something based on what you know. And if you're not a technology person, well, get a person who knows Python, maybe 2 weeks and build it out, right? But do you think that an investor, or even a potential employee, or maybe a potential employee is let's exclude a potential employee from this. Let's talk about an investor. Do you think an investor would care about what technology you used, knowing fully well that this was a POC?
Mm-hmm. I've never seen one of those happen. But there are cases like the autonomous car or more than that, like going one step deeper. It'd be like GPUs. Say if you built a whole tech stack based on integrated GPUs, right? And then you're trying to prove some numbers. Say, like, if you've seen Silicon Valley, the series, right? Compression engine, if that compression engine was totally built on integrated GPUs, then they must care. An investor, the right investor, will care about it when they do their due diligence. They come back
Right.
and then say, why can't someone who's using a discrete GPU come in and screw you over? Right?
Right.
That is when technology is important. You
Right.
know, so
Exactly. Right. So yeah, which brings us back to the point that whoever is building out this POC, the founder has got to keep an eye out for the future, right? Which means you've got
right.
to think about scale. You've got to think about, am I going to run into any bottlenecks, right?
Mm, mm,
Which is all architectural thinking,
mm.
right?
It is.
So
It
if
is.
you put that thought, or you've got someone else to put that thought in for you, assuming you're not a tech founder,
Mm.
then I don't think the tech stack itself becomes a point of contention,
It doesn't. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's just what you prove with it. So if there is a engine where you are converting video from one format to other, and then you're live streaming, say Zoom or other. So
Right.
if all you're doing is use Xeon servers integrated GPUs, then you are screwed. Although you are proving a point.
Right.
Let me stop this video of this guy who came in. But anyway, so unless you're doing that, you're going for your GPUs that are discrete. That is when you can prove your point. Otherwise, nobody cares for it. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So there
Exactly.
is a question here. Hey, as you were saying about the season of technology, now every product are being developed using AI. What's your view on AI market will be stable till 2025? This is
Okay.
Shruti
So
Hiregowder on Zoom chat.
okay. All right. So what's the name of the person asking the
Shruti.
question? Shruti. Okay. So
Huh.
Shruti, there are two. I would like to think there are two aspects to this question, right?
Mhm.
One, when we say AI market, right? Let's kind of differentiate between two things, right? One is there are there are companies that are building out AI products, right? Which means that they are building, for example, contact center solutions, okay, or they are building, level one, level two service desks for the banking industry, right? Very specific AI products, okay. Now there is such a thing as an AI market for those companies, right? But most of the companies that are working on AI today are not building AI products. They are building products to solve some problem. For instance, there is Swiggy, right? Swiggy has done a phenomenal job. They've built out a great solution, a great product that solves the problem of getting food from point A to point B, making food available to you from some restaurant, right? And now and then they diversified and said, okay, we can get you stuff from a shop, right? From shop A to your doorstep. And then they said, we can get you anything from point A to point B, right? And now they have their own Instamart where they are, they can send you some stuff, some groceries or whatever you need from their own store, right? So Swiggy is solving this problem, but they use AI, right? They do have data science in their stack, right? They use data science to solve this problem. Maybe they use it to understand their customer. Maybe they use it to understand optimization of delivery routes for their delivery boys, right? Maybe they use it to predict demand, right? But they building an AI product? No, they are building a product to solve some problem in some other market, right? So there are these two kinds of AI can basically manifest in the industry in these two ways, right? It doesn't make sense to ask, will there be an AI market for the latter section, right? For companies like Swiggy and Zomato or Uber, right? For them, AI is an enabler, right? And as long as there's a market for Uber or for Swiggy, there will be a market for AI there. So that settles it. That is one. The other is companies that are building out AI solutions. Now, is there an AI market there? I would say yes, because AI basically solves two kinds of problems for you, right? One is automation. It helps make things quicker and more efficient for you, reduces your cost and your effort. Okay. But more importantly, and this is reason number two, AI solves the problem of insights for you. AI delivers insights to you. It tells you something non-trivial that you did not know before, right? There is a need for both, right? You do have a need for large scale automation in a lot of different sectors. You do have a need for generation of insights in all these sectors, And as long as those needs exist, there is an AI market for these kind of products also.
Following to that, there is what is the scope of entrepreneurship in biotech, but we'll get to that, Bharati Meti. We'll get to that. But before we get to that, POCs, I think we are good, Mandar. I think that pretty much that's the idea. Prove your idea, don't care about tech, show it so that you get people and funding. That's all.
Correct. And in some cases, it's okay if you build out a POC without knowing the end goal.
Yeah.
Without knowing the end game, I think it's perfectly plausible for somebody to build out a POC, even if to realize that, hey, this is not the end game I'm looking for, so I need to just abandon this. I think that's another great way of looking at it, right, Vinay? So we have been talking about POC as being a means towards validating what you've been thinking of.
Right.
It can actually help you the other way around also, to invalidate whatever you've been thinking of and help you get more clarity, right?
Right. Totally. And I think this is true across board, including Series B, which is like maybe they're tending to be successful startup mode. There too many times that the product pivot, right? Product pivoting is changing the idea or course. It could be fine change or then like a huge change to building an entirely different product. That's a different problem altogether. But definitely pivoting is in, and POC definitely prove, and hence you shouldn't invest too much money into that. So build it with your bare minimum, and then to get that idea validated or invalidated, like Mandar said. Absolutely.
Right. And to add to your point, I think it's important to build your POC in a sustainable way, because sometimes POCs extend for much longer than you imagined they would. Right?
Yeah.
I can, for example, imagine Samir, right? Samir, who came as one of our guests, right? I can't imagine Samir saying, hey, I ran a Linger POC for 2 weeks or 2 months, right? He would completely disagree with that. I think if he's watching this, he's going to agree. I think for him, right, to build out an idea like Linger, right, to even figure out where he wants to take it, what he wants to achieve, I am sure he's put in years into that. Right. And what we see today is basically a distillation of years of experimentation and effort, right? And the key to all of that was that Linger did it in a sustainable manner, right? Without ಇದು ಹಾಸಿಗೆ ಇದ್ದಷ್ಟೇ ಕಾಲು ಚಾಚು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ಅವ್ರು ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಅದ್ರ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅದನ್ನ.
Got it. Yeah. I think so. And even in cases, I've seen POCs being reused in the product itself. So when you build something, build it properly, but make sure you know what you're building. So it's one of those problems where you spend 100 days thinking and 1 day to build the product versus 1 day to think and then 100 days to build the product, which is a complete waste of time. Right. So yeah, for sure that. With that said, let's transition over to recapping all our episodes so far, to which I want to invite all of you guys to turn your videos on, but keep yourself, on mute unless you are required to ask a question or something like that. So go ahead and start your videos and ask away your question. First, Bharati Meti, what is the scope of entrepreneurship in biotech field? Mandar, do you have the?
Well, okay. So I'll proffer something. I don't know if it's going to be very valuable, right? So now when we say biotechnology, right, I've never quite understood the scope of that field, right? It's basically anything to do with the use of technology in the life sciences, the way I understand it. Okay. Now, with that kind of a definition in mind, right, try asking that question with something like genomics. Right? So is there scope for entrepreneurship in genomics? You bet. Right? Would the world like to see startups coming up who will do gene mapping, help screen for different kinds of cancer at an early stage, help humanity even develop medicines for various conditions at an early stage, detecting them at an early stage? Absolutely. Right? Second, would we like to see a COVID vaccine? Oh, hell yeah. Right? In fact, this question is very opportune. Um, was it yesterday? No, day before yesterday, I had the good fortune of attending a panel, as a discussant with Dr. Samir Brahmachari, who is the former Director General of CSIR, right? And this man has built so many different institutions. He's not just built products and systems, he's built institutions, right? This guy has built CSIR, he's built genomics institutes, right? And he was talking about exactly this, right? The field of biotechnology, the field of bioinformatics, by the field of life sciences is actually very, very ripe for entrepreneurship, right? For example, he made me aware of this app, right, that is being built. I don't know if it's being built out of Pune, but it's definitely in India. The name of the company is Docturnal, right? I could never forget this name, Docturnal, Docturnal, right? You know what this app does? There are machine learning models in the back end, right? All you have to do is open this app and cough, and it can tell you what's the likelihood that the person who is coughing has tuberculosis. How amazing is that, right? So this is just an app. I mean, you're not talking about going for any kind of expensive tests or anything. The first level test is you cough into an app, and it tells you what's the likelihood you have tuberculosis. I think that's amazing. So yes, absolutely, there's a lot of scope for entrepreneurship in these fields, unless I have wildly mistaken what biotechnology means. But I'd like to think we've kind of understood that correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like strictly from investment perspectives too, right? 2019 alone, there was investments worth roughly about 270 to $280 million for the early stage startups, not like Series A, B, and later stage Allah, where they one company raises, I don't know, $2 billion Series C type of money. So this is early stage startup, 273 or $280 million worth. Like biotech startups are generally categorized in
So 1 year's numbers.
1 year's number. 1 year's number.
My goodness.
Right.
There you go, Bharti. I think
there you go. Someone's waiting to cut your check. Right. So biotech there are three, right? Medical, agricultural, and industrial startups, right? So industrial and agricultural, there have been the case. Like my wife at one point, she used to work for a company called Solomon, Bay Area. So it was about testing the soil and then telling what are the nutrient levels. So land or what is that you can grow, and then prediction and things like those. And then I want to say they were bought very early stage, bought for $100+ million by, I don't know, climate or weather or something like that, some other company like that. And then of course there is that fake meat industry, all sorts of things, right? So
there was a very similar effort done at IIT Bombay several years ago. I think this is at least about 15 years ago now, right? There's a professor called Kriti Ramamritam, a fantastic person, made some awesome contributions to the field of databases and distributed systems. He, built this project. It was called Aqua, if I'm not wrong, AQUAA, right? I'll find the right name. Where basically they talked about helping out farmers remotely, right? Building out a platform where farmers could ask questions. They could say, okay, I seem to see my crop has, this kind of discoloration of leaves. I see this kind of worms being, worms infesting around my crop. And the soil seems to have this kind of moisture level and everything. What do you think is going wrong, right? And helping them out, figure out what kind of disease that crop might have, what kind of steps they need to take, what kind of nutrition levels are missing in the soil, right? But I don't know. I think that was a Government of India project. I would love to find out what has happened afterwards. Just as an aside.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff happening, and then of course there is SpaceX. There is where there is biotech work that is being done in NASA, where there's I'm sure India ಒಳಗೂ. So there are all sorts of biotech work that is going on in there as well. Right? So lots happening in biotech. And I frankly think the more category red, blue, and green. That is how they categorize medical, agricultural, and industrial. So
Right.
the agricultural and industrial the startups have existed. There is a healthy ecosystem already, but it is medical where there is, of course, it has existed for the longest amount of time, but there is still a lot to achieve as well. So it's only beginning. Like, remember, we are supposed to walk around with cyborgs and be friends with them soon. So don't
Right.
discount that at all. Right. So that's about those questions. Mandar, as we recap through all these episodes, right? We started with just us chatting and things like those. We initially thought we'll bring a guest once in a while, and then ended up getting a guest every episode, pretty much. Right.
Right. Right.
What has been your takeaway from these episodes? What stands out for you?
Oh, well, one obvious thing that stands out for me, well, obvious in hindsight, is the sheer level of achievement of all our guests, right? I mean, you think about someone like Simha, for example, Simha Sadashiva, or you think about someone like BV or Dr. Srinath, or Karthik Betalpura,
Right.
or Mir, and you know, all of these people have achieved some really phenomenal things, and I think I count myself as privileged because even though some of them, very few of them are actually friends in real life,
Mhm.
I got to hear from all of them on various perspectives, right? I think it has been extremely illuminating. So I
Mhm.
can't pick one thing that has stood out for me. The whole journey has been, you know, a series of wow, wow.
Right. Right.
What
Yeah.
about you?
Like on that note, I have to say, Usher Simha's company, they announced a Series B of 25 million last week. Uh,
Awesome.
Amele last week, Dr. Srinath got Karnataka Rajyotsava award,
Yeah. Yes.
so
Yes, he did.
which is unbelievable. So the thing that stands out is, in spite of them being all these high achieving individuals on their career and the front, they've also been generous coming to this show and then talking about
Absolutely.
things. Right?
Absolutely.
They've
And
all been
without a
like,
second thought, most of them didn't even require a second phone call. Yeah, right?
exactly. And they even joined the Zoom before us.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah. That has
in some
happened. Yeah,
cases,
embarrassingly.
right? So, like one of the episodes that stood out was, of course, the ideation and then angel round with Raghunandan. Right? He was talking
Correct.
about like so other. So ideation. One of the things that definitely kind of stood out from that episode is, don't worry about ideating too much, but think about what is the crux of the company, which kind of comes to POC. What is it that you want to do, and then early stage money and things like that. Other What we didn't talk then was equity of what is the early employees equity, and you have been part of DataWeave as well and things like those. What's your thought on that? We will talk about it in next episode, but what's your thought there?
Yeah, see, I think it takes a while for a company to kind of, there's also a growth curve of the company, right? That it
Mhm.
takes a while for a company to reach that point on the maturity curve where they finally can sit down and say, okay, this is what our ESOP pool is going to look like, and
Mhm.
this is what we'll give to our initial employees. Unless, of course, the employee has negotiated that at the time of joining, right?
Mhm.
I think in a lot of companies, it's basically it's you go on you go on faith, right?
Mhm.
You go on faith. You go there and there's a quote unquote gentleman's agreement. Pardon my usage of that extremely sexist term. There is no reason why women should not be included in that. It's an understanding, right? But for a company to actually realize it, it does take a while, right?
Mhm.
Because there are bigger problems to solve than to figure out the equity of each employee, right? I think
Mhm.
the only people whose equity is well understood is the promoters, is the main founders, right? But
Correct.
it's never just the main founders, is it? There is a founding team, right? That is equally important. And it's not easy for the founders to figure out what is going to be the equity of even every person in this founding team. right? So I think it's a matter of kind of waiting it out, right? And trusting the process, right? Trusting the founders. And if you don't have that trust, you shouldn't have gone with them in the first place, right? This is not the place for you.
Right. So, recently, one of my friends and I were talking about how he's trying to start a company and things like that. And then this person who is trying to recruit, he's saying, "I will come on board, but only if you give me the role of a co-founder and if you give me such and such percentage in the company and things like this." To me, that's like, it's a good thing. Yeah, like keep things on paper. It's definitely not bad, but it also looks like, hey, are you willing to invest time and then be worthy of being called as a co-founder is a question.
Exactly. So it's like, have you really earned it, right? So it's no different from really deciding compensation, right? For example, somebody says, in this case, somebody said they want to come on as co-founder and with a certain amount of stake and everything. Then the person who is hiring has really got to ask, does this person have it in them to spend weekend after weekend solving problems, not minding getting frustrated, right? Taking ownership? Or is this person only going to be somebody who is on the other side, right? Just asking for things, right? Are they going to give? Now, unless there is clarity, that unless the answer to that is a clear yes, this person is good to come on as co-founder, it should simply be treated as any other job interview, and the answer should be no, we are currently not looking at you as a as a potential candidate. Thank you very much for applying.
Wish them good luck and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So, there's a question by Shruti. Proof of concept versus proof of value versus prototype. What's the difference?
Well, there is one more here. You can add several more. There's proof of technology also, right? So proof of concept, Shruti, we have talked about that. So I'm not going to go into that. Proof of concept is something that can be realized, right? There is proof of the pudding, basically. That's a proof of concept. It's not just a concept anymore. Proof of value need not always be, it need not always be a realized thing. You have to show that there is value in this. So remember those 4 questions I asked. What is the problem? What is the solution? Who is the customer? And why would that customer pay? You answer these 4 questions beyond reasonable doubt, and you have established proof of value, right? You don't have to have implemented anything, right? You don't have to have talked about technology, right? But you have to show how this is going to add value to somebody, right? So those are the differences. There is also proof of technology, which means that you can't just say, oh, I'm going to scale this up to a million transactions per day. You have to show how you're going to do that. That is proof of technology. Right. Yeah. So versus prototype. Well, a prototype, proof of concept. So again, prototype is something that you just break out of a box somewhere and say, hey, here's a toy that works, right? So it's very similar to a proof of concept. So
yeah, a fine line between all. There's not much difference. So I think those are all our questions. The Engineering sir is online. I don't know if he has any thoughts before we wrap this up. But we do have a Sumit Kumar Patil who says talk something about RCB, please. RCB. So it's a startup that is not giving profits.
ಇಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲಿ RCB okay. So RCB ಒಳಗೆ ನೋಡೋಣ ಈಗ proof of concept ಇದೆಯಾ? Proof of concept ಇದೆಯಾ? Yes, they have built a team. Proof of value ಇದೆಯಾ? Right. So proof of value ಇದೆಯಾ? I don't know. I mean,
when we get the cup, we'll see.
ಈ ಸಲ ಕಪ್ ನಮ್ದೇ ಅಂತ. See, I'm not a big cricket fan, so I don't really care. But ಅದು ಈ ಸಲ ಕಪ್ ನಮ್ದೇ ಅಂತ ಪ್ರತಿ ಸಲ ಅಂತಾರೆ ಹಿಂಗ. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಅವ್ರು ಬಹಳ ಆಸೆಗೋಗ್ತಾನ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು. ಹಿಂಗ ನಮ್ದೇ ಅಂತ ಏನ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಅಂತ ಬರೀ ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತೈತೆ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿ ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಅದು ಏನು, ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ಟರ್ ಆಲ್ ಒನ್ ಟ್ರೋಫಿ.
Right. So let's hear it from Engineering sir, who is now online and unmuted.
Yeah. Good morning, Vinay.
Good evening to you. Pretty late. Good.
Yeah. There.
Thank you, sir. Join na. It's late, adru.
Yeah. I was awake. Normally I sleep late. It's a very kind gesture, and I joined late, and I think people have enjoyed that. This one, and I'm not into this. I was also looking at the question answer sessions and all that discussion what you did. Really, it also throws some kind of light and awareness to me also, the some of the aspects that I had missed out. So from that particular concept, it's more educative and informative, or rather I would say, and definitely would benefit the students. I thank you and Mr. Who is speaking. I just Vinay, the
Mandar.
Mandar, and the other person. Who is that? Mandar and you too, no?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So my sincere thanks to both of you on this particular occasion, and hope we'll continue to do this in future also for the benefit of the students.
Absolutely, sir. I'm
Thank you.
Yeah,
glad so many people, I think up to 75 people had joined.
yeah.
This is great. Although it is so late in the night. Very.
Yeah, it's already 11:30 now.
They have a lot of other options to watch, but yeah, they chose to watch Startup Harate, which is a great thing. Right. Thank you again
Nice
for
to
joining, and all the guys who supported the show as well. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel. And next episode, we are going to be talking to Rohini Chakrabarti. Look her up. She is the partner at one of the venture firms, NGP Capital. So we'll talk about early stage startups and equity and women in entrepreneurship as well. Right?
Yeah,
She's also founded companies. So that'll be another great episode. Would love to have some more participation too. Thank you, guys.
yeah.
excellent.
Thank